Well, those sneaky bastards. Let's begin. Well, I don't know about you, but to be honest, I don't think it feels too great being a driver at the moment. I mean, only last year Sadiq Khan rolled out his ULEZ to more areas, and of course, all other councils seem to be copying it, don't they, with their own sort of version to crack down on harmful fumes. And of course, not only that, but we've got the dreaded 2035 ban on new petrol and diesel cars, and now, of course, it seems that the supermarkets have decided to put the boot in a bit more. And I say that because according to this article, it says there's a petrol warning for people filling up at Asda, Sainsbury's, Tesco's and Morrisons. So what's going on then? Well, the RAC has found that there are apparently wildly different petrol prices across the UK supermarkets, by quite a bit of a margin in my opinion. And yes, I know, of course, you do often see occasional differences in petrol stations which are close to each other, usually by a couple of pence or so. But this, according to the RAC, the Fuel Watchers found there was a 14 pence difference between the cheapest and most expensive supermarket fuel on January the 31st. And to be honest, I think that's just a massive kick in the balls. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't exactly think Tesco's or Asda or Sainsbury's or whoever are exactly going to be short of a bob or two, especially, of course, with the amount of money they were bound to make during the cost of living crisis, where they just loved to put their prices up, it seemed. But according to this, the data provided to the Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, revealed that the average price for a litre of petrol in the UK was 140.5 pence, or, £1.40 if you want to speak normally, in January, while diesel cost 148.5p. This means a tank of fuel would cost £77.24 for unleaded and £81.73 for diesel. But in Scotland, the highest cost for a litre of petrol was 139.89 pence, while diesel was 149.13, and this equates on average apparently to £76.79 for a tank of petrol and £81.87 for diesel. But it doesn't end there, because the RAC apparently found that the cheapest litre of unleaded sold UK-wide was in Sainsbury's for 131.9p in Oxford and Newport, and the most expensive was Morrisons at 145.9p in Exeter and Ipswich. Now, you would have thought that with the amount of money these guys had, they would just take the hit on the petrol. They'd realise that if they give quite a low price overall, then surely that would mean more customers would go there to fuel up and perhaps do a shop in their stores. I guess, business sense might just fly out the window nowadays. In general, it just seems that these days supermarkets just seem to love their award or point systems or the occasional fuel voucher rather than just setting low prices. Hoping presumably, of course, to get our details when we sign up for these things, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but maybe, just maybe, they may pass them on to other advertisers and things like that for a bob or two. I mean, I could be wrong, but it wouldn't surprise me if that is indeed the case. And to be honest, it just makes me wonder, when EVs start to become more and more mainstream, and all supermarkets have dedicated charging points, how much they will also vary in cost. I mean, there's apparently a company called GridSurf who has standard price all over the UK for their charges. So will Sainsbury's, Asda and Tesco's do a similar thing? If they are varying the cost of their petrol and diesel by a bit across quite a lot of their supermarkets, and I'm guessing the cost of EV charging is bound to be varied a lot more, especially with, in general, I'm told, the current variations of cost to charge a car anyway. Usually, on average, petrol does vary a couple of pence, doesn't it? But, depending on where you charge or what company you use, that could vary by quite a bit. And that is in general, so who knows what the supermarkets are going to do. Apparently Sainsbury's, I've heard, are going to roll out fast chargers or ultra-fast chargers, whatever they call them, in their stores, which apparently, from what I've heard, is apparently going to be charged 75 pence per kilowatt hour. And I think you get about 3 or 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you get 3 miles per kilowatt hour. That's 25 pence a mile that equates to, surely. So therefore, isn't it cheaper just to drive around a petrol car at the moment? Obviously, I know that is a really high price for a kilowatt hour, and in general, if you are an off-peak tariff, you get it for 7.5p or 7p, depending on who you go with, or something like that. So that 25 pence a mile could end up being 2 pence a mile, and any variation in between, depending on where you charge your car, because as I said, 75 pence is quite a high price to pay. However, while places are charging that ridiculous amount, then in my eyes, if that is your only charging option, and you can't find for whatever reason a cheaper charger, then I guess what they don't actually realise is, for quite a lot of people, it might be a better idea to keep your current petrol or diesel cars until they stop being so greedy and actually give people a charging price of, say, about 20 or 25 pence per kilowatt hour. And if they did that, that might boost EV sales more, wouldn't it? Surely, especially as when GridServe apparently launched, they were charging about 24 pence, I think it was. So it can be done, and that was only a few years ago. And yes, I know, admittedly, the cost of electric has gone up by then, and who knows how much it will go up by 2035. So if these are the current prices to charge your EV, it doesn't look really too great at the moment, does it? But of course, we had a bell end overseas try to take over places, which drove the prices up, and they are thankfully finally starting to come down. So it's probably about time that EV charging did as well. But either way, if they want to push EVs, they're going to have to do something, aren't they? Well, then, good news for common sense. It looks like all these protesters who just love to scale our monuments and burn flags, whatever they like to do, chuck orange paint over things quite a lot of the times nowadays. It does seem that finally, they are going to be actually getting in trouble for it, and by quite a bit, hopefully. According to this article, because they say that protesters who climb on war memorials will face jail, apparently, and also a £1,000 fine in a bid to crack down on all sorts of demos going on. But apparently this move is part of a wider plan to tackle disorder and protests. And apparently the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, said that the new measures are intended to punish a small minority of activists who insult those who have paid the ultimate price for their freedom to protest. And that is something, unfortunately, quite a lot of these idiots in the street who protest against things, and I don't mean the people who protest peacefully, I mean the idiots who do like to damage or destroy things or whatever else. They do seem to forget, don't they, that people actually did give up their lives in order so they have the right to protest freely. So in my opinion, these people really should think about that before they choose to do something stupid. But anyway, Mr. Cleverly said, peaceful protest is fundamental right in our country, but climbing on war memorials is an insult to those monuments and remembrance and cannot continue. Well, yeah, it's about time he switched on the government brain cell, isn't it? Or maybe, just maybe, he's located their lost backbone or giant kahunas or whatever. So what's going on then? How long are they going to spend in prison? Well, according to this, the move, which apparently includes a 3-month prison sentence, let's just hope it isn't going to be a suspended sentence, because that wouldn't exactly teach them too much, in my opinion. But this apparently comes after protesters climbed on the Royal Artillery Memorial last November. And an amendment is apparently due to be introduced in the Criminal Justice Bill that will make the climbing on war memorials a specific public order offence in England and Wales. Well, what about Scotland and Northern Ireland? Surely they will hopefully copy this. Because let's face it, no one should have the right to just do what the hell they like and damage things without some sort of consequence. I mean, it does often seem, doesn't it, that when these people arrive in court, they come with their lefty lawyers or whatever else, and they just get off scot-free, and therefore people who also in their cause will do a similar thing the next day or maybe the next week or whenever. But hopefully this wider plan to tackle these disorders, it says, should be announced by ministers this week. Let's just wait and see if that happens, shall we? That is, of course, if Rishi can remove his head from his bum, because apparently, according to this article, made a bet. And that bet he thinks he's going to win. But personally, I don't think he's got any chance at all. He has apparently made a bet, or Piers Morgan rather, has apparently made a bet with Rishi. And what's that all about? Well, Rishi obviously lives at the moment in 10 Downing Street, but I personally think he lives in Clan Cuckoo Land if he thinks he's going to be able to win this. He accepted a £1,000 bet from Piers Morgan that deportation flights to Rwanda will be up and running before the next election. The Prime Minister apparently was confronted by the Talk TV host who told him, I'll bet you £1,000 to a refugee charity that you don't get anybody on those planes before the election. Will you take that bet? To which the PM apparently shook hands with Piers to seal the deal and stress he is working incredibly hard to get the people on the planes. And you know, don't get me wrong, if people come here illegally from the safe country of France while they're saying they're claiming war, whatever other crap they come out with, whilst at the same time accidentally losing their phones in the sea or any other ID documents, then yes, of course, they should either be turned back around to France, or of course be deported to a safe third country while their application is processed, which obviously is the Rwanda plan. The thing is though, Rishi did have the choice, presumably, of just accepting the amendments that a few MPs put in to toughen up the Rwanda bill. But of course he didn't, did he? And he just let MPs have a vote on it. No one, presumably no one, I say, that Labour would vote against these amendments, and therefore they'd stand no chance of going through. So it doesn't really make much sense to me that he thinks that the Rwanda flights will take off. Presumably, of course, he thinks the current bill is tough enough, but I'll tell you this, Richie, it more than likely isn't. I mean, apparently there is a general thing that says that Rwanda is a safe country. However, they are apparently, from what I've heard, able to say, well, yes, Rwanda is a safe country, but it's not safe for me because, and then give their reasons to appeal why they can't go there, which, let's face it, loads of them are going to do, aren't they? And so what's Rishi done about that? Well, of course, from what I remember, he said he was going to free up more judges or create more judges or whatever to look over these appeals. But the thing is, he shouldn't be doing that, should he? He should, in my opinion, have just said, no, I'm sorry, you go in there. When you hear our decision, then we'll take it from there. But until then, if you want to come to asylum in the UK, you have to be deported here first. Because that is a deterrent for people who come over here illegally. And let's face it, remember, this at the end of the day, crossing the channel from the safe country of France is, well, illegal, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, if someone wants to live here, then they should fill out the proper forms and go through our points-based system. And unfortunately, this is just making a mockery of it altogether, isn't it? People coming over here illegally and just getting to stay. When at the end of the day, if we don't know anything about them, they could have quite a few criminal records that we wouldn't know about and therefore may in some cases be quite a risk to the public, all depending on what crimes they may or may not have committed. But either way, Rishi also said the Rwanda plan is part of an overall plan that is working. Well, doesn't that just fill you with confidence, eh? Doesn't me, unfortunately. The hour-long sit-down for Talk TV was filmed at 10 Downing Street, or Cloud Cuckoo Land, as I said earlier. Piers slammed the Rwanda scheme as he argued the issue of illegal migration seems massively more problematic. He said, do you think that should be the priority when at the same time the ONS just predicted that we could hit 73 million people who are in this country coming in, not on boats, but coming in the normal immigration system by 2036. But wait for this, because the PM insisted that illegal migrants will stop coming in as a result of the Rwanda policy. Well, to be honest with you, Rishi, if they don't, and if your plan doesn't work, which let's face it, by not accepting those amendments put in by MPs, and of course shackling us to the EU via the Windsor Framework deal a little while ago with Northern Ireland, then I guess if anything, your time of Prime Minister will be over, because if you're anything like a Brexiteer like I am, you do not want to be shackled to the EU. I mean, that's why we voted to leave it in the first place. And to any Ramonas out there, or keyboard warriors out there, who are now calling me all the hunts under the sun, I would just like to remind you that 17.4 million people voted for it at the end of the day. And I'm sorry, whether you like it or not, we live in a democracy. So that vote should have been respected. Although, if anything, it does seem the government has tried to be doing their best overall to water it down, it seems, doesn't it? And this whole Windsor framework is just the latest attempt to keep us in the EU and all by name, in my opinion. Unfortunately, no, who knows what Labour would do when they get in. I can guess a few things, but we'll just have to wait and see. So why, if anything, is Rishi so confident that this is going to work? Well, he said that people talk to me a lot about illegal migration, as I'm sure they talk to you about it. It's important that we get a grip on it, and Rwanda is one part of an overall plan that is working. And as you say, you are scratching your head. Albania is an example of why it is working. We created a new returns agreement with Albania, and it meant that if people came here illegally, we could send them back. And you know what? They stopped coming. Rwanda will do the same thing for us. Well, Rishi, that in my opinion is slightly different, because they're Albanian people coming from Albania and you're sending them back to Albania from what I've heard. This is slightly different because they're coming from France, or the safe country of France, and you're sending them to Rwanda. So a lot of lefty lawyers out there bound to have a problem with that, aren't they? Piers Morgan even said that I do not think it's going to work for you, to which Rishi replied, okay, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree. Just like I'm guessing a lot of your voters will do, Rishi.